All right, guys. So we need to talk about something very important here, and that is we need to talk about the current state of Throne Liberty, because recently NCSoft dropped a major update. It was pretty much the pre-patch to the next expansion that's set to drop in like 2 or 3 weeks. I think like just under 3 weeks. And this pre-patch update included 2 new vertical progression systems and a Mythic Plus like challenge dungeon that was dropped, as well as 2 other major areas that isn't really relevant to this video. But the other 2 things is a skill specialization, which I think was a huge W. You access that at level 30. It makes the early game combat feel a lot better. Of course, post 30, the combat, or a lot of the abilities, you have more abilities that you can use on the move. You have more movement abilities. It's faster. You deal more damage. I think just overall very, very good. I don't want to get too much into detail with that because that could be its own video. And the other thing that they added was the life skilling, or some of the horizontal content, which is also, I think they've done a pretty decent job with it, introducing it to the game, but it's not like it's not super significant to the Endgame Loop. Instead, the other 3 things, the 2 vertical progression systems, as well as the challenge dungeons, aka the Mythic Plus like dungeons, these are the areas that I want to touch up on today, because it's really important that you understand not only what these updates, like how these updates have impacted the game, but also what to expect. So in this video, I'm going to educate you on how these systems work, how they impact the game, and also give you my honest thoughts and opinions on it, as well as provide some feedback. If you guys do enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm getting really close to 100k subs, and I'm streaming Throne almost every day to and through the launch on Twitch, so come hang out with me there. Okay, so we have 2 major vertical progression systems that have been introduced, and we have these Mythic Plus challenge dungeons, which affects the Endgame Loop. Now, obviously, if we're talking about vertical progression with this game, pay to win is also being tied into this, and that is absolutely a major point of discussion via this new patch. Surprise, surprise. Why is it that people are defending this pay to win? Why is it that people are even saying that it's not pay to win? Let me be clear here. Systematically, it is 100% pay to win. You're purchasing currency with money, and you're purchasing gear, and you're gaining power. Pretty simple, right? The reason why people are justifying it, and people like me say the gaps aren't really that big, it's not too bad, is because if you are tolerant to a certain degree, certain amount of pay to win, the way the pay to win worked in this game is that gear had a hard cap. This dagger right here is as vertical as I can go. I cannot have a stronger dagger than this. This is maxed out. The highest tier, the highest enhancement level, +9, and it's fully traded out. There's nowhere to go from here. And when you're able to do this across all your pieces of gear, you are essentially at max, not essentially, you are at max power. You cannot go any more vertical than that. There's a hard cap to your gear. Now, that hard cap was relatively low in Throne and Liberty. A free-to-play player could realistically hit that cap and compete against a pay-to-win player, and they would be at the exact same power level. Because of that, you had a lot of players that say, hey, they just get there sooner, but I'm going to get there, and when we're there, we're going to be fighting each other, right? And it wasn't one of those Lost Ark-like angles where when you eventually hit that max eye level or get close to it, it goes up again. Obviously, they have increased the vertical progression throughout the launch of the game, but they paced the vertical progression in a way where free-to-play players were reaching those caps relatively early, and were able to experience that end game, being able to fight against other players at equal gear levels. This is the reason why a lot of people were defending this game. I think that Throne and Liberty, out of every other Korean MMO that I've ever played, it was the least pay to win. Not systematically, of course, because like BDO, Lost Ark, Throne and Liberty, systematically it's equally pay to win. But because this was the only Korean MMO that I played where the gear cap was so low, and a free-to-play player was able to reach that cap in a reasonable amount of time and stay at that cap and be able to remain at that cap for a reasonable amount of time, I thought it was pretty fair. Now, with that said, I do not think that that is the case anymore. In fact, I'm very sure, I would bet a lot of money that that is not the case anymore because of these 2 new vertical progression systems and how they are designed. Now, to be fair, I think both of these systems are only 1 or 2 changes away from being really good. So before I give you my opinion on these systems, I'm now going to be walking you through how these systems work exactly, and I'm going to try my best to keep this as simple as possible for anyone, even if you don't play Throne Liberty right now, for anyone to be able to understand it. First thing that we're going to go over here is the new trait resonance system. This trait resonance system is pretty straightforward. Okay, if I click on this right here, you're going to see a resonance effect below the 3 traits that you have. When you click on this, you are going to see a resonance conversion, and this requires resonance stones. Okay, now you have an RNG chance to get a random trait or a random resonance trait. Obviously, some of these are best in slot. For me, I want hit and heavy attack chance. Surprise, surprise, it happens to be a 3.3% chance for each one. I have essentially like a less than 7% chance to hit this. So if you do the math, on average probability, I'm going to have to roll in X amount of times, certainly more than 10 times, in order to actually get this. I'll probably have to roll this roughly 15-ish times in order to get either a hit or a heavy attack chance trait, and this applies to virtually every piece of gear. There is a different cost to each piece of gear. It costs stones. How do we go about getting these stones? Well, the way you get them is by going into substance transformation. TLDR, you're just going to feed gear into here. The better, the stronger the gear, the more points that you get. As you can see, 2 pieces of gear gave me already max. You'd never feed a +9 fully traded tier 2 weapon into it. Obviously, you'd be feeding like these lower level ones, and as you can see, these go proportionate to how valuable the item is. And once you get this to conversion tier 5, you are going to get a guaranteed 15 resonance stone fragments. You'll also get an RNG chance at getting a random piece of gear. The higher the tier, the better the gear that you can get. And this is going to cost you Solent. So you're going to obviously have to farm in order to be able to do this. TLDR, you are going to be farming gear as you play the game, mainly from your dungeons. That's where you mainly get your gear from. And you're going to feed it into here to get these resonance stone fragments. And with those stone fragments, you are going to craft the resonance stones. As you can see, I have the ability to craft 6 right now. It costs 5 stone fragments for 1 stone. Now, I should add that there is a little bit of a 5-head play when it comes to feeding your conversion tiers here. There's a way to cheese it a little bit, which is essentially just getting Marins, and you grind the Marins down to base level or quality level green Marins, and then you just feed all of this, and it will take you about 2,000. It will take you exactly 2001 green quality Marins in order to get conversion tier 5. I don't know if that's intentional. I have a feeling it's not, and they're going to patch it out. If it's not intentional, then this system is suddenly significantly easier, because farming Marins is not impossible and you could do it somewhat regularly. So suddenly it is possible to get the best in slot traits, but obviously it's going to take time, it's going to take resources, and you are gated to a certain degree because this is a game outside of one of the new systems. This is a game where you're not going to be able to farm infinitely. If this is not intended and they remove this system, then you are gated even more as a free-to-play player, simply because most of your gear is going to come from dungeons and you can only run 2 dungeons a day. Now, when it comes to the amount of power that you're getting from this, I wouldn't say it's a very, very significant amount of power. However, it is a good bit of power simply because you have the ability to stack a specific trait. For example, I run evasion, and on my gear pieces, I can get 80 evasion per trait. There are 5 armor pieces that I can trait that into. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 80 times 5. That is a good amount of evasion. 400 evasion is pretty big, I would say, right? So this is absolutely something that will attribute to your power, but it's not going to make you like a god amongst men, so to speak. Now, the last system is the Rune System. This is kind of the big one, and a lot of people have been talking about this system in particular. This system has 2 elements of power to it. You have just the regular runes and the rune levels, and something called Rune Synergies. If I click on this button right here, I can go to my rune management system, and here's how this works. You have 3 slots. You can call these rune sockets. When you get a new piece of gear, you are going to have to unlock these sockets with something called rune hammers. It will cost you 4 rune hammers for a tier 2 weapon, 2 rune hammers for a tier 1 weapon, and 1 rune hammer for tier 1 accessories. You cannot rune out your armor as of now, but I would imagine you will eventually. Now, with this said, when you unlock a rune socket, you will get an RNG chance at getting an attack rune socket, a defense rune socket, or a support rune socket. There are 3 different types of sockets. Now, this leads us to what's called the Rune Synergy. If I click on this button, you can see I get a bonus effect depending on the order of the rune socket type. This is similar to Diablo 2's rune words. As you can see, this one right here, Dex 3, attack speed 3%. If I want it, I need the first slot to be attack, I need the second slot to be support, and I need the third slot to be defense. It needs to be in that order in order for me to unlock this passive. These Rune Synergy passives are extremely powerful. They are very significant, and you will want to roll until you get the best in slot 1 that you want. Seems simple enough. Here's the issue with this system, however. As you roll, you are going to get an RNG chance to roll, right? The problem is that these RNG chances, this is straight from the site. When I clicked that button, it took us straight to this percentage site, just because I think legally in Korea, you need to actually show the percentages. In order to get an attack rune socket, you have a 10% chance. Defense is 30 and support is 60. You can quickly run the maths. That means realistically, you're going to have to expect to click on average 10 times in order to get an attack rune socket. Rest assured that every single rune synergy that you are going for will require an attack rune socket. As you can see, all of these, the order is just different, but all of these require 1 of each. This 10% chance is terrible, absolutely awful. Another issue with this system is as you fail, I'm going to show you this right here. This is my tier 2 weapon. If I wanted to re-roll this, because I didn't get an attack, for example, it cost me 4 hammers. A tier 2 weapon costs 4 hammers. When you fail enough times, that cost goes up. So imagine a pity system, only the opposite of that. I think that is also ridiculous. As you can see, this weapon, which I've rolled a lot, it now costs me 12 hammers for every roll. So it goes from 4 to 8 to 12, and I would imagine it goes up to 16 from there. This is the Rune Synergy slash socket system. Now, how do you get these hammers in order to unlock these slots? Well, the way you get hammers is by just dismantling these runes, and you will get rune fragments. 100 rune fragments will give you 1 hammer. Essentially, what you're going to be doing in order to get runes or farm runes, since you're getting your hammers from rune fragments coming from runes, dismantling runes, you are going to be running challenge dungeons mainly. When you run these challenge dungeons, you will get rewarded a certain amount of runes. You dismantle said runes and you get rune fragments. This, by the way, is the new Endgame Loop. The next thing I do want to tell you is how many hammers you can realistically farm every hour or every run. But before we do that, we need to talk about the other element of power when it comes to the runes. We've just covered the Rune Synergy type. Now the next thing to cover is the actual rune level. As you can see, this rune has a 15 on it. This is a level 15 rune. Runes have 3 different quality types: white, green, and blue. This is green, this is blue, as you can see, uncommon and rare. I've dismantled all my whites, so I don't have them right now. But if I were to click this button right here and get some rune information, you can see how much power a single rune is able to give you. So if I click on, let's just go to the damage rune here. At blue level, which is the highest grade, this maximum, which is at level 60, will give you 30 melee critical hit. Because this is uncommon, you get 20. At blue, you get 30. So if you add up all of the runes that you have, this power that you're getting from the runes, it's not, again, it's kind of like the trait resonance system. It will certainly help, but it's not going to make you a god. Now, how do you go about actually leveling up these runes? Well, we go back here. NCSoft has provided us a sheet that shows you exactly how you go about obtaining these runes. Now, these right here, when you're farming these are showing you the drop rates of each rune that you're getting. If we go back to the previous sheet, this is showing you the upgrade rate of the actual rune. What is an upgrade rate? Well, here's how it works. Let's say I get a base level 1 rune. There are a lot of different types of runes in this game because they are separated based off of the effect and type. So a bracelet rune is different from a weapon rune, right? So if I have a level 1 base rune, the next time I get that exact same rune, I have a percentage chance to get a level 2 version of it. Once I get that level 2 version of it, the game recognizes that I've unlocked it. And the next time I get that same exact rune, I will have a percentage chance to get a level 3 version of it. So what are those percentages? From level 1 to 2, it's 100% chance. And as you go down, as you can see, the percentage chance for getting an upgraded one is lower. If you have a level 18 rune and you get a dupe of it, you have a 65% chance to hit a level 19 rune. As we go down this list, you can see that percentage eventually gets down to 10%, which is very low. Just so that you know, the next section of this video, I'm going to be talking about the Endgame Loop, and being at like level 15, like this range right here, like from 10 to 20, you will already feel that grind. Also, when it comes to these rune levels cannot be swiped for. You cannot pay to win the rune levels. You have to grind them. There's no way around it. This is the new Endgame Loop. I would say that it is good that the rune levels are not pay to winnable, but I don't like the rune socket or the rune hammer system. Now, while you're grinding to level 60 runes, will you eventually be able to get the perfect synergy rune socket types? Yes, you will. You will be able to get the best in slot rune synergies by the time you hit level 60, because you're just going to have a ton of hammers by doing that. However, it will take you time. You're not going to be able to get it right away. A pay to win player can get it day one, and the rune synergy is a significant amount of power. So keep that in mind. This is something that you can eventually hit, but a pay to win player will get there immediately first, and it will take you time to actually get there. At my level right now, at level 15 to level 20 runes, I'm getting roughly around, on average, 50 to 70 rune fragments every run. Now, these runs can be done more efficiently. You can finish these runs anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. I would say on average, they're probably going to take the normal player 10 to 15 minutes, but keep in mind, it's not always the easiest to be running these, to be finding players to run these groups consistently. And in order to be able to farm these relatively fast, you will need to be in a full tier 2 gear set with good gear in order to be able to, I mean, sure, of course you can do this in tier 1 gear, but I assure you the reality will be you're either not going to be able to really find a party unless you have the gear score for it, or you yourself wouldn't want to be farming these in a group full of people in tier 1 gear. You're going to want to be in tier 2 gear or people with tier 2 gear. The worse your gear, the longer it will take you to farm. The longer it takes you to farm, the longer it will take you to get through this whole entire system. So I would say somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes for an end game level player. That's going to give you roughly around 50 plus rune fragments. That's about a half a rune hammer per run. and that will continue to go up. I would expect at level 60-ish, you'll probably be getting like 5 hammers, maybe around 5 hammers every run, but at that point, you're not going to really need the hammers. Now, one other thing that I should mention about this before moving on is that this system is a system that also allows free-to-play players to farm Lucent, because you are not capped to a certain amount of dungeon runs per day. You can do this infinitely, and as you run these dungeons, you can just continue to break down the runes into rune fragments, turn those rune fragments into rune hammers, rune hammer bundles, and then sell those on the auction house. Okay, so here is my feedback when it comes to these two systems. When it comes to the trait resonance system, I don't really like this. I think that this needs to have some kind of pity system to allow free-to-play players to be able to hit the trait that they want. You already have a pity system. You already have a trait unlock stones and trait conversion stones that are available for regular traits. I think NCSoft absolutely needs to have some kind of pity system or some kind of item that you can farm to give you the resonance trait of choice, because this right here is just so bad. Like, you just imagine farming, especially if you're gated towards farming, just to have a 3% or 6%, 7% chance, up to 9% chance. I'm just not a big fan of it. I think they need to add some kind of pity system to this. When it comes to the runes, I think the rune system could potentially be really good. I think, number one, allow us, when we unlock with the rune hammer, allow us to choose which rune socket type we want. If you think that's too easy, okay, at least make it a 33% chance across the board for each socket. A 10% chance for an attack rune is just terrible. Having a 10% chance to roll an attack rune just feels awful. To add insult to injury, you absolutely have to remove the punishing system. It's like D4 rolling affixes back in the day. It's absolutely ridiculous that it cost me more hammers as I fail. Like, I don't know whose idea it was to implement that, but I think that's just a terrible idea. All right, so I've pulled up this diagram here that I made for you guys, this professional looking diagram, to kind of give you a visual as to how the vertical progression system now works, because these two new systems has absolutely affected the pay to win, to the point where I will say now that a free-to-play player can no longer catch a pay-to-win player. Now, maybe if you're insanely lucky and you're a super sweaty, hardcore free-to-play player that plays literally 12 plus hours a day, maybe you can reach that gear cap that a pay-to-win player can. But even then, I would be kind of like, did you really? Like, are you really free-to-play? It would be one of those angles. A normal, committed free-to-play player, there's no chance I see them ever reaching the gear level of a pay-to-win player, and that is the difference between pre-patch and post-patch that I think is very, very significant. The whole saving grace, if you can call it one, if you're tolerant to pay to win, of Throne Liberty was that you can reach that pay to win level power, because once the pay to win players get there, they can't go any further. That is no longer the case. As per this diagram, everyone starts right in here. Okay, this chart is essentially your gear progression. So from the start, you're here, and you would progress your gear until you hit this hard cap. This cap consisted of getting the right gear pieces, getting the enhancement level to +9, and getting all your traits maxed out. Those three things could absolutely be pay to win, meaning a pay to win player could realistically hit that mark like almost instantly. And a pay-to-win player would take time to get there, but the difference is, again, that this time that it took wasn't bad, and the power discrepancy, because realistically, a free-to-play player, he's not like, you're not going to compare the power from here to here, right? Because this is literally 0 gear level 1. So as a free-to-play player is playing the game, that he's probably going to get, by the time a pay-to-win player gets to that point, free-to-play player is going to probably be right in this range. So this right here, this power discrepancy, it wasn't that significant, right? It wasn't that significant, and the time it took to cover that cap was reasonable. And when you got to that cap, you are now tied with, or you're at equal level with the pay-to-win player, and you stayed there for a good amount of time. This was the old progression system. This is the reason why, like I said in the beginning of the video, a lot of people were okay with it. That is no longer the case because now you have this down here. So by the time you get to roughly around here, as you continue to work on this cap, you are also going to start working on this new cap, which includes your resonance traits, your runes, and your rune synergy. Now, your runes, you can call that whatever, because this is not pay to winnable. Fair game. I think it's good that you can't pay to win them. I think it's a bit of it's a hard grind, which is the next section of this video, but as far as pay to win, that's fine. Resonance traits, rune synergy can be pay to win. Okay, so what does that mean? That means now a pay to win player can go from here, essentially at the start, and go straight to here. Make it, and a free to play player, let's just use that benchmark earlier, roughly around here. Okay, now rather than having this gap of power, there's this amount of gap of power. And to go from here to here for a free-to-play player is significantly longer. So if you're looking at this and you're like, Kanon, the rune system doesn't sound that bad. What do you mean? I can do that as a free-to-play player. Hey, what do you mean? You know, the resonance trait system doesn't sound, it sounds like I can do it. It's doable. The issue is not that those individual systems are bad on its own. The issue is that those systems being introduced to everything that we already have and being pay to winnable creates this issue that I've just demonstrated for you. It creates the issue of, hey, a free-to-play player is going to have a bigger gap of power in the mid-early game, through even the late game, and it's going to take them even longer to hit this cap. The final issue to this is that by the time this cap increases, because tier 2 accessories are coming out in a few weeks and legendary gear is coming out a few months after, I don't think a free-to-play player can even hit this cap by the time this new cap is introduced. That's another problem. When it comes to the pay-to-win issues, this is it. These are my thoughts. This is the best way that I can explain it. I hope that made sense. Now, the last thing we're going to go over is the new Endgame Loop. A lot of you guys may be playing the hyper boosting server, having a great time. You guys are thinking, man, this is fun. There's a lot of events going on. And to be perfectly honest, what you're experiencing there is exactly why a lot of people like me, myself, had a lot of fun with this game. Originally, you would have events every hour. You'd have one significant war-like event every day, essentially. And every hour during the prime time, at least, you would have world bosses that had PvP or PvE. You would have PvE events that you can go to. You'd have GVG stuff. And every single one of those events was worth going to because you got good rewards. They have changed this now for whatever reason. These rewards now give you pretty much nothing. I'm going to pull up the rewards here, but you pretty much get nothing and you're just not incentivized to go to these events anymore. Well, what do we get? Well, this one right here, I get a little bit of Solent. This is like nothing in the end game. I get a fruit basket, which is used for making food buffs. And I get one rune. I get one rune. That is literally it. If I run a tier 5 dungeon right now, I will get like almost 10 runes. There's 0 point in me actually doing any of these events anymore. For those of you on the hyper boosting server, you get boosting coins, so sure, there is some relevance there, but there's no point or incentive for me to do this. Everyone that is at the current end game, it's all about rune levels. That's your vertical progression. In order to farm these runes, you are going to be farming these challenge dungeons. In order to farm efficiently right now, without going into too much detail, until you get to level 20, you're going to be farming tier 5s. And then when you hit level 20 on your runes, you're going to be then farming level 9 or 10s or even 11s, depending on your group and what you're doing there. And then you'll eventually start running 15s. And you're just going to be running these dungeons over and over and over again. The whole purpose of these dungeons is to try and climb as high as you can in order to really challenge yourself. And sure, the rewards do get better, but nothing beats efficiency. If I can farm these tier 5 challenge dungeons and farm way more runes way faster, this is going to be more efficient for me to level up my runes, because leveling up your runes, by the way, is not based off of the grade of the rune. It's just based off of the level. If you didn't understand what I mean by that, just know that I want to just farm as many runes as possible in order to get my rune level up. And the only way for me to do that is by doing these challenge dungeons. So all I'm doing every single day now, outside of the wars, and I'm only doing the wars because that's obviously the main content of the game. It's fun. Sure, you still can get some Solent and Lucent, which is good, but this is hands down what I want to be spending my time on, for the better or worse. I'm personally not a big fan of just having to run the same dungeon over and over again for hours and hours and hours, and I assure you, it is a massive grind. This is not something that you're just going to be doing for a week. Now, I think AGS or NCSoft can fix this very easily. All you have to do is, well, first of all, some people might be like, well, why don't you reduce the grind to level 60? In my opinion, I don't think having a long grind to max power level, as long as that's not pay to win, so in the rune leveling case, it's not pay to win because you can't level up, you can't pay to win the runes. I think a long grind to a free-to-play endgame max power is okay if it takes long, just so long as that grind is enjoyable to do. What I liked about Throne Liberty was I was incentivized to log in and do every dynamic event, which would change every hour, and get significant progression out of that. That is no longer the case. All they have to do is go back to that. I like the fact that they now have something in the game that I can grind and farm infinitely to my heart's content. I think that's totally fine. But I think what a better solution would be, my suggestion would be to juice out these events so that doing the events will always take priority over just the mindless grind. Give me like 300 runes for doing this. I don't know, 200 runes, 100 runes. Or give me runes fishing. I think that would be also a great idea. When I go fishing, fishing is actually pretty fun in this game. It's really chill. Allow me to get runes while I fish as well. And by the way, while we're on that topic, when it comes to these events, if you guys just added in fishing and life skilling, you should also add in a fishing event. I think that would be super fun. You go out there with your fishing rod, and whoever can catch the most amount of fish, and in the 10, 20, 30 minutes, whatever that may be, wins the same amount of prize that you get in the other areas of the game. I think that would be a massive W. Do it. Make it happen. That's pretty much it, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Keep in mind, again, not only is the purpose of this video to share some insight as to what the current state of the game is like and some of these updates and how they feel for an endgame player, but it's also to provide feedback. And I genuinely hope they hear this message and make improvements to their game, because right now in its current state, I think there will be more players that are turned off by it than there are turned on by it. Anyways, there's my 2 cents, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.